Welcome everyone, today I have a new build guide for Diablo 4. In this video, we'll look at the maximum level 100 Necromancer for the endgame. So we'll be going through all the Necromancer skill trees, legendaries, and also, as you can see over here, I have pathed out the pathways for the Paragon levels. And in this video, similar to the previous Rogue video, I'll provide you guys with alternative choices in terms of skills and also Paragon levels. So this way you can have more flexibility in the build and also more benefits with different damage. Now, as a brief summary of this build, this is going to be a Bone Necromancer that sacrifices all of your minions. And this build will focus on getting maximum essence and also dealing more damage with maximum essence. This build will focus heavily on critical damage, critical strike, vulnerability, and also increased damage and also damage reduction. And if you have seen our previous video, this build have a lot of damage boosts in terms of pure damage and also elite damage. This build will also do a lot of variety of damage against different foes who are injured, vulnerable, and also not healthy. So coming over to the skill tree over here, what you're going to see is we'll be going with Bone Splitter, and there's two variations of this build at the very start. And what I'll do is I'll show you guys the two variations very soon. So the first variation I want to go with Bone Splitter is that Bone Splitter will make enemies more vulnerable with a 20% chance. And this also follows to the level 5 in Bone Spear, which allows us to have increased critical chance, and each time we critical hit, we gain more shot. And the additional shot we get is also providing us with additional damage, because as you're going to see with one of our legendaries, we'll be gaining about 50 to 100 or 150% bonus damage against enemies with a bone shard. Now right away guys, here comes the first variation of the build in terms of skill choices. You can be going with the upgrade of the Bone Splitter and also the Bone Spear, which allows us to gain more critical chance. Or you can be going with one of them that provides us with vulnerability, the other one that provides you with more critical strike. So my first consideration is that I will be using the Bone Splitter for vulnerability debuff. This is not a 100% debuff, it's a 20% debuff. And over here, we'll gain more critical chance and also more damage in terms of the main core spell. This is somewhat okay because we'll be able to gain more vulnerability through the Bone Shard with the legendaries. Now if you do find yourself not getting enough vulnerability, you can always go with a Bone Spear that provides 100% vulnerability onto the first target, and this ideally is the best way to get early game before you get a lot of critical chance. Now as we have a look at the skills and also passives, we can see that we'll be going with maximum essence, and this will be the cornerstone of the build. So 9 maximum essence over here, and also increase skill cost by 9% and also increase the damage by 15%. Now here I'll be going with 1 point into Healed Flesh, which allows us to get a lot more corpses with this particular build. As we move over to the Macabre section, you're going to see we have perked into all of the spells in the Macabre. So 5 levels into Bone Prison, which allows the Bone Prison to be a tanky unit for us, like one of the minions. The Bone Prison will also provide us with additional essence as enemies are trapped inside, and this also makes enemy vulnerable. Now we'll be going with 1 point into Corpse Explosion, and upgrade of Corpse Explosion turns this into damage over time. So the concept of Corpse Explosion is that we'll be using Corpse Explosion for multiple sources of damage and also essence gain. So by consuming corpses, we'll be gaining more essence, and this also allows us to deal more damage by consuming corpses. Now one of the ways we gain corpses is using the Healed Flesh. As we deal damage over time with the Corpse Explosion, you will generate more corpses, and this will allow us to do more damage and also more benefits. Now over here, we'll have a very good defensive spell with the Blood Mist. And with this upgrade, we'll be able to generate more corpses with Blood Mist. And if we do eventually get to the legendary that allows Blood Mist to trigger off the Corpse Explosion, this allows us to consume corpses rapidly and also to lower the defensive mechanics of the Blood Mist, and this lowers its cooldown, and this is actually really good. So in this sense, Blood Mist and also Corpse Explosion will be consumed together to form a somewhat of a beneficial combo, and this combo allows us to gain more essence, gain more damage, and also become more defensive with lowering cooldowns. Now there is also a very interesting mechanics with the Blood Mist and also the legendary, which we'll talk about when we look at the legendary items for the Blood Mist, which allows us to not having to put on the Corpse Explosion and still to be able to use this one. So this is quite an interesting mechanics we want to talk about for the Necromancer on the second part. Now as we keep going, we're not going to go into Corruption for this particular build, and also we will be skipping a lot of the active spells over here. But we'll be going into all the points in terms of the Bone spells. So Bone spell will gain additional critical strike chance with more essence. And over here, when we critical strike, we'll gain additional damage, and also over here, we'll gain additional critical strike damage against vulnerable enemies. Now when we spend more essence with our spells, we also gain reduction to our bone spells. And this means we'll be gaining reduction to the bone prison and also reduction to our ultimate with the bone storm. So coming over to the Bone Storm, we'll be leveling up the Bone Storm to the max with its caps, which allows us to gain a massive 20% critical strike chance, and this also comes with a 15% reduction to damage. So the Bone Storm itself, ideally we're doing some decent damage, but we're not using the golem, so we're not doubling up the damage. But we'll be enjoying its benefits with damage reduction and also the boost of critical chance. Now because we're not using any minions, we get a massive damage reduction up to 18%. And over here, the sacrificial benefit of not having minions is scaled up to 60%, which is really powerful. Now I'm sure you guys are wondering, how come you're not using the bomb golem, right, or the golems? So here, let me just quickly jump over to the next variation. I was going to save this one to the next part, but I can't hold it anymore, right? So what is going to happen is, with Blood Mist, you don't have to be casting Corpse Explosion, and this allows you to somewhat remove Corpse Explosion on one of the active spells. And this means that even though I have perked out with 6 active spells, I only need 5 slots. And this also allows me to go with a variation of the build, which I can use the golems. And if we pick any of the golems, so here notice I'm sacrificing the golems, but if we come over to the alternative, if we pick one of the golems and also have the golem will become a tank for us. And this will also provide us with more corpses. So what is going to happen is, when we activate the spell, we're not going to have Corpse Explosion, but we're going to have the golems taking up a spot. But the downside is, if you do decide to take this plicker method, you won't be enjoying in one of the perks over here. So the downside of this is, you won't be enjoying into the perks of not having any minions, which means you won't get a 10% bonus damage. So yes, coming back to the original build, I'm not considering the golems, so I'm still sacrificing the golems. And let's keep going, we'll talk about the Book of the Dead very soon. So here, for the final cornerstone or the keystone of the build, here we'll be going with Ossified Essence, which allows us to deal more damage with bone skills with every bit of essence over 50. And we can easily deal over 100% damage this way, because we have a lot of ways to get more essence. Now because the essence bone mage is by far the strongest and also high bursting damage, a lot of the legendaries and also paragons will be looking into more essence and also benefiting on this keystone. So briefly coming over to the Book of the Dead, you can see that we'll be sacrificing the skeleton minions with bonus critical chance, and also over here we gain another 15 bonus essence. Keep in mind guys, those bonuses will be doubled up with 60%. Because of this plicker passive over here, we gain 60% of the sacrificial bonus, which is going to be massive. And finally for the golems, I decided to sacrifice the golems for 30% critical strike damage. But of course guys, it is alternatively speaking, you can still go with the golems. So if you're going with the golems, just make sure you have the Blood Mist that triggers Corpse Explosion, so you don't have to use Corpse Explosion manually, and then you can have the golems for additional summons and also additional benefits. Now coming over to our choice of legendaries. Similar to our previous rogue build guys, I have provided you guys with more options with offensive spells and also with different defensive and also utility spells. We'll talk about those alternatives as well, and here are some of my selections for the spells. Likely, I'm thinking we'll be using a one-hand or two-hand weapon. So this is the case we're using a one-hand weapon for the off-hand and also main hand. This allows us to have one additional, legendary aspects on the compensation that we don't get a double effect for having a two-hand, legendary. So because we're using one-hand weapons, the biggest bonus we get for offensive spells or offensive, crafting is from the 50% bonus from the amulet. So we'll be going with the splinter aspects, which allows the bone spear to hit the first target, make them vulnerable, and also the shard from the bone spear will deal 50 to 100 or 150% bonus damage because of the scaling of the amulet. So this is one of the reasons on the initial build I want to have more bone shards, and having more bone shards means we deal more damage. Now briefly going through the other offensive aspects we have. The first one we have is that by consuming corpses, the core spell will deal more damage. That's pretty straightforward, right? And the other one we have is we're going to buff the key passive, which is the Ossified Essence, which allows us to deal more critical strike damage massively on top of the existing one, up to 40%. And here when we critical strike, we also gain a massive boost of attack speed. And over here, you can see that when we consume corpses with Bone Storm, which will be getting a lot of corpses, we'll also extend its duration, which gives us more critical chance and also more damage reduction. Finally, as for one of the defensive and also offensive aspects, is that when we have a barrier activated, we can deal additional damage up to 25%. Now, one of the ways we can be gaining barrier is through the Bone Storm damaging enemies, which allows us to gain a barrier equal to 2 to 5% of base life for 10 seconds. Now, alternatively, if you guys do want a way to get a barrier, so here we can also go with a common one, which we see elite monsters will get a barrier for 10 seconds. So this is the Necromancer unique one, and also the the normal ones for all the classes is going to be this one. Now, on the case that you guys don't want to go with a barrier combination, you can also go with this offensive codex to deal more damage with higher resource. So what that means is we can swap out of this one when you have a barrier one for the higher resource one, and then we can consider removing one of the defensive one into something else with a utility one. But for me personally, I really like the Necromancer or any of the class with a bit of barrier and also defensive mechanics. So here, let's come over to the helmet. The helmet is going to be straightforward. We go with the Blood Mist one that triggers Corpse Explosion and also lowers cooldown. So this is going to be the center build for one of the legendary aspects. You do have to find this one yourself though. You can't be crafting this one. As for the chest, similar to the rogue we have, we'll be going with offensive defensive aspects. So this one's supposed to be a defensive aspect, right? But here we have offensive capacity, which allows us to have a higher crowd control duration, but mostly we'll be dealing 20% to 50% more damage to the unstoppable monsters, like the bosses and also the world boss. Now finally for the boots, we'll be gaining additional movement speed, about 8 to 16% when we critical hit, and we'll be critical hitting a lot with this build. Now if you guys haven't subscribed, it is a really good time to do so, because I'll be covering tons of Diablo 4 related topics and also videos and also guides. We'll be looking to the top meta builds, non-meta builds, leveling up, and also Paragon tricks. We're also looking to the latest events and also official updates, and also changes to different characters and also different builds in the game. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and also turn the notification on, because a lot of you who are watching the videos have not subscribed. You can see 80% of the viewers who are watching our videos have not subscribed, so make sure you subscribe to stay tuned for the latest update for Diablo 4. Now coming over to the final part of the video. So this is going to be the fun part for the Paragon levels for level 50 to level 100. So here's the Necromancer tree. Is pretty straightforward. We'll be pathing through for the bonus damage on the right hand side. And here what I want to show you guys is, for the Necromancer, you want to focus on intelligence first and then dexterity for the critical chance. And just in case you guys are not aware of, the Necromancer have a lot of good bonus damage. And as you go through this particular tree, you get to see all those bonus damage that will show in the previous videos. Now because my focus build on my first variety of the build, I'm planning to not use the Golem, and I plan to use the Corpse Explosion actively. So for this particular concept, I will be using a Glyph that allows me to gain more damage when having no minions. And this Glyph will also buff the magical knots. So here we'll be gaining 17% bonus damage on 3 of those, getting 51% bonus damage. We still also get 20% bonus damage over here with a rare knot. Now, one of the reasons you guys are seeing that I'm not clicking on the the 240% bonus rare knots is because in the late game, we'll be unperking those for the benefits of other ones. Because in the late game, we wanted them to reach further right. But at the start of the game, if you're boosting your blue knots over here, you should be clicking on those as well. Because those also provide you with, 240% more bonuses. So what we do is, once you get to the late game, you have less skill points, you come over here to reset those and to use those for other points. Now moving over to the next board, you can see that I have been perking into a lot of the blue ones, the rare ones, and also legendary ones. So one of the legendary ones for the bone mage is that we will gain more maximal essence and also dealing more damage with maximal essence. And this is the concept over here on the first board, getting more maximal essence and also dealing more damage with bone spells. So everything's pretty straightforward. One of the focus on this particular tree is over here, and here what we'll be doing is we'll be getting more resistance and also more bone damage. So we'll be perking into those, and we'll be having a special Glyph over here. Now because I planned to have a lot of barriers and also be more durable for the Necromancer, I'm planning to stay healthy, and if I can stay healthy, I can gain a lot of bonus damage. Up to about 50%, 53% bonus damage when we're healthy. So this is the first variation of the build. Now we do have another variation of the build. Yeah, I actually have a lot of variation over here. So the second variation of the build is that if you play as a close melee mage as a Necromancer, you can be gaining more bonus damage to close target. So this is your choice. Are you going to play a close melee range target like a caster, or are you going to play like a more defensive caster that is not taking a lot of damage? And I have the variety available for you guys to be picking different glyphs. Now as we move over to the next board, you can see a lot of bonus damage to injured enemies, a lot of critical strike damage bonus, which is going to be really good. Because if we look back over here, I think we have 100% critical damage bonus, and here we have tons of bonus damage against different foes. So coming back over here, you can see one of the legendary perks is over here. By consuming 5 corpses, we'll be gaining 40% damage bonus for 6 seconds. And this is one of the ways I want to get more corpses throughout the healed flash, and also to get more corpses possibly from the golems if you're using that one, or getting more corpses with the blood mist with upgrades. Now if we have a look at the glyph section over here, I'll be going with a bonus to all the rare glyphs. And this also gives us bonus damage for every corpse that is nearby us. Now this is one of the bigger ones for the Necromancer, so you'll be gaining over 109% bonus damage against elite monsters, and this is because this is amplified glyph. Here you'll also be gaining a ton of resistance, 27% resistance if you have all the perks. So this is one of the best sections for the Necromancer, and if you guys want, you can skip the first board, use this board as the first board, and use this board as the second board. Now as we come over to the third board for the Necromancer, you can see that I have been perking into additional damage against enemies, and here more damage against enemies. And on the way to the glyph, this is quite nice because we'll be getting the legendary that allows us to have damage reduction and also bonus damage with corpses. And on the side of it, we also have a massive boost of critical strike damage. I think this is close to about 120% critical strike damage bonus used in the glyph. And here we also get a bit of armor and also additional damage against injured enemies. Now around this part of the game, likely you guys are very close to about level 80 or 90, or even close to level 95. So you have two choices. You can go up over here to get more additional critical strike damage and also more damage. Or you can path over here to unlock another glyph. So by going for this glyph, we'll be dealing a lot more damage against vulnerable enemies. And most of our enemies are vulnerable, right? So this one's really good. We'll also be dealing more damage when we're fortified. This is not the biggest deal, but if you do find yourself to be fortified, this is really good. But ideally, we're just here for the glyph. We're not even perking for the rare ones. So this is like the level 95 or level 90 when you go for this one. Now hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. And in case you guys are wondering, yes, you can use the blood mist and also the corpse explosion trick to have one extra active spell. You don't have to use the minions as well, you can use another active spell as well. But ideally, if you're using a Bone Storm and if you have the golem, this is really good for the doubling of the damage. But you do lose out a little bit because you will be having a minion over here and you might be adjusting this glyph. So let me know what you guys think about this build. Again, we went over a long time to be making this build, and I really enjoyed the Necromancer as I planned for the Necromancer. We'll be making a minion Necromancer, we'll be making a blood Necromancer that is going to be unkillable. So let me know in the comments guys if you're interested in playing the Necromancer and also which of the build you're going to go for the Necromancer. Now before you go, and if you guys didn't know, we have a new YouTube channel. And if you guys haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe and check out the behind the scenes and also fun clips and also more stories about us. And then you get to know me a little more personally instead of just reading the news and also the games, right? So I want to share a little bit more with you guys. So make sure you check this channel out if you're interested about Matt and also Uni. She's really funny too, and she's really shy. So I want to give her a surprise and do a shout out for the new channel to get some subscribers. Thank you guys. I'll see you guys next time.